Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Thursday morning by Andrew Erickson and Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, it is week 3, and this is our Thursday show. We are talking some waiver ads if we're starting or sitting them. We're talking some other start or sit decisions, and we'll make our touchdown calls at the end of the show. As always, it is a jam-packed show, so we will jump right in. I will remind everybody that all of our consensus rankings for week 3 and beyond can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. Guys, let's start with the waiver wire ads. Fitz, I want to start with you. I want to ask about Quentin Johnston. We talked on the Dynasty show with Bogman all offseason, just kind of about the rookie class going into their second seasons here. We basically never even hit on Quentin Johnston because it was so obvious that we had no interest in him. We did a number of Dynasty startup mock drafts where I think he went borderline undrafted. But he had 2 touchdowns here in week 2. It looks like somewhat of a new Chargers team under Jim Harbaugh, even though they're still quite run heavy. What are you doing with Quentin Johnston if you picked him up off waivers? Are you starting him coming off of his hot week 2, or are you kind of just picking up and holding him?
He is getting to the point where he is borderline startable right now, and I think in a better matchup he might be. I've got him wide receiver 46 this week. The Steelers in Pittsburgh, that is a daunting matchup. Johnston has the 3rd highest first read rate in the league right now, according to our friends at Fantasy Points. And his target shares the first 2 weeks, 21% and 32%. Like, this is really encouraging usage. They're getting him the ball more on like quick stuff, screens and slants, and just letting him do what he does after the catch. I was totally out on him because I was worried about his hands. I thought the rock hard hands might be an insurmountable problem for him, but like, drops have not been an issue yet for him. So that's really encouraging. I was avoiding him all summer in drafts. And then in one of my very last drafts, a 14-team, 20-round draft, I grabbed him. And I'm glad I had that one share. Like, just fear of missing out. And it turns out, like, totally avoiding him, I might have been missing out.
Were you aggressive in trying to add him on Tuesday going into Wednesday off waivers?
I added him in one spot, and I did put in bids in maybe 2 or 3 leagues, but I didn't want to break the budget.
Erickson, what do you think about Quentin Johnston?
Hello, Steelers cornerback Joey Porter Jr. Can I introduce you to Quentin Johnston? I don't think Johnston's going to do anything in this game, to be totally honest. I think he's going to get clamped down by Joey Porter Jr., who's been a shutdown cornerback through 2 weeks of this NFL season. So I'm way off QJ this week. I think this is the Lad McConkey show. We've seen this over the years. Insert slot receiver against Steelers linebacker in this defense. I think that it's going to be the McConkey show. You look over the entire season, they have the same target share in this offense. So in a matchup where both teams want to establish the run more than anything else, Justin Herbert's a little bit banged up, getting hurt at the end of the game against the Panthers after taking a weird sack. I got Quentin Johnston outside my top 50. And again, it depends. I know that I think a part of what he's seen in terms of his increased usage has been due to Joshua Palmer being hurt the last 2 weeks. Like, he's been playing limited snaps. And to put in perspective, I would rather start Juwan Jennings, who you could pick up off the waivers this week, in that Deebo Samuel role. I would rather start Jennings this week than Johnston.
Did you add a lot of Quentin Johnston on waivers just like for the long term, Erickson, or did you just avoid him entirely, kind of knowing that he had a tough matchup coming up?
I avoided him. I mean, I didn't really see that. I mean, he's coming off a 2-touchdown game. That's why he's popular. One of the touchdowns, yes, was really nice over J.C. Horn, one of the better corners in the league. And the other one, he was wide open in the end zone. So again, I'm not going to. What are the chances he catches 2 touchdowns at any other point this season? Right. So that's kind of my concern long term. And again, look, the rookie year still happened, and he was horrible as a rookie, and he couldn't get targets. So again, I don't want to be just completely erase what he did as a rookie, because he still had Justin Herbert. So those are things to keep in mind, that at least I'm looking at it.
He wouldn't be the first receiver to really struggle with drops and then, kind of figure it out after year 1. Like, I'm not saying he's Davante Adams, but Davante Adams had a ton of drops his rookie season and obviously ended up being really good. So, I mean, it's something in the back of my mind where, like, I don't want to entirely write off a guy that was supposed to be like, hey, he's really athletic, but maybe might need some time, and is now like, there's not a lot of target competition. I totally agree with the concern about this week, especially, and I want to see it more before I'm comfortably starting him or anywhere close to that. But it was encouraging just at least to see him do something, right? Like, because it was entirely negative last year. So any positivity is like a huge step in the right direction compared to what he did in year one. Let's talk about, I'm going to loop these guys together. Carson, Steele, Samaje, Perine. You can throw, Kareem Hunt, you're not going to be starting here in week 3, but just in terms of the long term as well. Erickson, I'll start with you here. What are you doing both in terms of week 3 and the long term with the Chiefs backfield and all these guys that were picked up off waivers with Isaiah Pacheco going down?
Well, if I have Carson Steele, I'm changing my team's name to Carson Steele Flex, number 1. That's what I'm doing. As a nod to the Drake and Josh episode where it's Jefferson Steele Flex when they get fake IDs. That's one of the fake ID names is Jefferson Steele Flex. So shout out to that. So Carson Steele Flex.
I might have a vague memory of that in the back of my mind. There is no chance Fitz had any clue what you were going
well, it's Drake
for.
And Josh. He doesn't know. That's okay, Fitz. Yeah. Well, I'll send you the clip. But for me, I think it's pretty clear cut where Steele has the touchdown and the rushing upside in this offense. Now, how many carries does he get? Like, how many opportunities are we looking at for this Kansas City Chiefs running back? Because we've seen this Chiefs offense before. Well, they get in the red zone and they just throw the ball. And they don't care. They're not going to run the ball. But I still think that Steele has the most upside because of the touchdown equity and a high-powered offense. So he would be the guy that I would start, especially in a half PPR. Perine, I think, is going to be the guy that operates on passing downs, 2-minute drills. So kind of depending on situationally how this game goes against Atlanta, he could have a more productive game if the Chiefs are trailing. They have a lot of 2-minute situations. You see Perine catching dump offs. That's a scenario where Perine is productive, but there's also a scenario where the game script never works in Perine's favor, where he is just really not involved at all. So I think Steele's the safest guy, and I'm pretty far away from Kareem Hunt. I don't know if he's going to be active in this game. I saw...
for Kareem Hunt, I'm not thinking week 3. It's more of a long term.
But I've seen people, or at least in some of my leagues, I saw someone empty aggressively, like 20%, 25% to get Kareem Hunt. And I was kind of taken aback by that. Honestly, this is my opinion, but I thought Kareem Hunt was pretty horrible last year for the Browns. He scored a lot of touchdowns, but besides that, he was not effective as a rusher. So I view him as a distant third between these two guys. Again, why did they just bring in Hunt instead of Samaje Perine, right? If they're playing kind of like similar roles. I think of the Hunt's just a depth piece. I don't think that he's much different than how the Cowboys brought in Dalvin Cook, right? He hasn't even seen the field yet, and their running backs have struggled. So I like Steele the most.
Fitz, what are you doing with this backfield? And I'll kind of pose the question as, is there a chance that the answer is none of these guys and it's just Mahomes is going to throw a lot more, which I guess could benefit Perine amongst the 3 of them?
There's an absolute chance the answer is none of these guys because in 2 of the last 5 years, no Kansas City Chiefs running back got to 600 rushing yards. And it's setting up like another one of those types of years. Right now, I'm just kind of throwing up my hands in the air. I've got them Steele RB38 and Perine RB39 this week. Perine is the walking definition of a replacement level back. And that's not meant as a total insult because there are a lot of replacement level backup running backs in the league. Like he's just a meat and potatoes guy who can probably grind out 3.8 yards per carry if you need him to do heavy duty rushing all year and be a competent pass catcher. Steele is maybe the more interesting guy. I guess there's a non-zero chance he's the 2024 version of 2010 Peyton Hillis, who comes out of nowhere and has 1,600 yards and 13 touchdowns for the Browns. More likely, he's the 2024 version of 2014 Matt Asiata, who had, I think, 9 touchdowns and about 600 yards for the Vikings after Adrian Peterson ripped up his knee. So there's touchdown appeal here with Steele, but I don't know. He's got 4.7 speed. He's not running away from anyone. He's just got to run through people. And, that might elevate the injury risk a little bit. I'm not seeing yardage upside here, quite honestly. So we'll see. But right now, my instinct is to just stay away from this backfield.
A spiritual sequel to that Peyton Hillis season would be super fun, honestly. Did you mention, Kareem Hunt just in terms of long term? Are you, maybe not going aggressively after him, but did you pick him up cheaply anywhere just to, take a flyer? Not
at all. He looked like he was toast last year, and I'm more interested in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, quite honestly, than Kareem Hunt.
All right, that says something, certainly. Let's get into our section where we're going to plant our flags on some players. You guys have each picked one player that you really just want to say, this is the guy for week 3 that you are really getting behind. Fitz, we'll start with you. Who is your plant your flag player in week 3?
Oh, it's DeAndre Swift. Not that I'm a full-fledged Swiftie by any means, and the Bears offensive line has been pretty bad so far, but the matchup is pretty glorious against the Colts with no DeForest Buckner up front. The Colts knew the Packers were going to try to run the ball down their throats last week and stuff the box and still couldn't stop the Green Bay running game. They were trampled by Joe Mixon in week 1. This sets up for a get-right game for the Bears offense. And I don't think they want to have Caleb Williams throw it 40 times. So I think they're going to try to have a healthy run-pass mix. Big game coming for Swift, I think, or at least a 70 or 80-yard game.
Erickson, what do you expect out of Swift? Because I've, like everybody else, I've been pretty discouraged by what I've seen from him so far. I didn't really invest in him heavily, on draft day anyway. Do you think this is a get-right game for him?
It has to be, right? It's week 3, but this is kind of do or die with DeAndre Swift. Again, he's got a couple good matchups coming up, so you could see this be a stretch of productive games for DeAndre Swift, and then maybe you get off of him. But yeah, the matchup is there, and it's just a matter of, okay, it's two weaknesses going at each other, right? But which weakness prevails? The Bears' offensive line and run blocking, or the Colts' defensive line that doesn't even have DeForest Buckner anymore, can't stop the run even with Buckner healthy? So, you don't ever want to put your faith in Shane Waldron to devise a game plan where they're going to take advantage of the run game for the Bears, but that's what they have to do here. So, again, I think it should be Swift. They've been just based on the usage, it's been all Swift. They are barely ever used guys like Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson. They paid Swift, so it makes sense that they're giving him all these opportunities. But part of me also thinks that in the back of my mind, what we've seen from Herbert the first 2 weeks is he's gotten the short distance carries, right? So he's gotten the red zone touches. He's gotten when it's been 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. So even if Swift does have a productive rushing game, he's putting up rushing yards. Don't be surprised if we see Herbert maybe find the end zone as well. So again, just keep that in mind with some good matchups coming up and some bye weeks. If you ever dealing with injuries, make sure Herbert's not available on the waiver wire.
Erickson, let's stick with you for your flag player.
Speaking of waiver wire, Christian Kirk. He's been hitting the waiver wire in a couple of different leagues. I know a lot of people have asked me, should I cut Christian Kirk? What do I do with Christian Kirk? You start him this week. That's what you do because the matchup for him is perfect. You look at the Buffalo Bills and what have they been doing all year? What have they done traditionally under Sean McDermott is they just limit big plays. They don't let you attack downfield. Marvin Harrison was a ghost in week 1, and then he played the Rams and went absolutely nuclear because they allow these underneath passes. What did Devon Achane do against the Bills? He caught a bazillion passes all underneath. That's what you're going to see from this Jacksonville Jaguars offense when they're playing Buffalo on Monday Night Football. You're going to see Christian Kirk more involved. Again, the Jaguars offense has been out of sync. Well, maybe that's because they haven't gotten Christian Kirk the ball whatsoever. And they're forcing Gabe Davis targets left and right. I know we want the Gabe Davis revenge game, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen against Buffalo. Trust me. So I think Christian Kirk, especially with Evan Ingram out, I think that's flying so under the radar. He's not going to play in this game. So there's no competition for targets. It's not going to be Brenton Strange. So I think Christian Kirk, again, he caught a touchdown last week that was ruled, got nullified because of a penalty. And if he caught the touchdown, nobody would be concerned about, Christian Kirk. So I think this is a great bounce back spot for him. I think he's a great buy low if you need to start a receiver this week. Christian Kirk started slow last year too, but I think this is a good matchup for him. So I like Christian Kirk.
Ian Rappaport tweeted earlier this morning, Thursday morning is when we were taping this, that Doug Peterson said Evan Ingram is, quote, a little bit further away. Sounds like at least very much up in the air for Monday Night Football.
Yeah,
so
he's not playing.
Yeah, I certainly doesn't seem like it. Fitz, where do you have Christian Kirk ranked this week?
Boy, I'm going to say I have him down at like wide receiver 40. I'm not as optimistic as Erickson. For one thing, like about the underneath thing, Erickson, like Christian Kirk's average depth of target is like 18 yards this season. Like it's really deep, and I kind of don't understand that. You would think that flies in the face of logic when he's playing along with Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas, that Kirk would be the underneath guy. And he only had like 3 or 4 targets last week with Ingram out. I know he had that touchdown catch disallowed. I just, right now, there's not a lot of confidence for me in this Jaguars offense at all. And that's part of it. Like if this offense was clipping along and there was a little blip in Christian Kirk's target share for a couple of weeks, I wouldn't be that concerned. But just the fact that we really haven't seen anything out of Jacksonville through the air this season has me worried.
Like, I guess for me, it's they've been bad, but Christian Kirk has also not been involved. So wouldn't the fix be, hey, let's get Christian Kirk more involved because that'll make us better? I guess that's the way I'm kind of viewing it. Yes, I agree that Jaguars offense has not been great, but that's also come accompanied by Christian Kirk not being involved. So that's just why I think if they want to improve, they would, feed Christian Kirk a little bit more underneath.
TD, Tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6. Whatever you call a touchdown, one thing's for sure, touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, from the special teams or defense, we don't care how they score them. We just want to bet on touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your bet today. One super fun matchup in week 3 is Lions-Cardinals. I am positive I have mentioned Arizona in every one of these reads this season, and that is not changing in week 3. I cannot wait to watch this one. One of the highest totals of any matchup this week. Lions are favorites on the road. This is going to be tons of fun. It should feature tons of touchdowns. Lines and odds subject to change, of course, but I am expecting touchdowns galore in that one. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $250 in bonus bets instantly and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FANTASYPROS. That's code FANTASYPROS for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys, let's get into some of our start-sit player debates. Let's start with the player who has been featured a lot on the show already, but he continues to be really interesting because he continues to play well, J.K. Dobbins. And I want to ask if you guys are starting him or Brian Robinson. Fitz, I'll start with you. A couple of good options here.
Worm, why did your Ravens get rid of J.K. Dobbins and bring in Derrick Henry when they could have gotten the same thing for much cheaper? Dobbins has run for more than 130 yards and a touchdown in each of his first 2 games, but he was facing the Raiders and Panthers, not exactly the toughest of matchups. This week, he is up against the Steelers in Pittsburgh, a much more difficult matchup. The Steelers' defense is nasty. Their defensive front 7, really tough. Dobbins might not get skunked on this matchup, but I suspect he is not going to have 130 yards and a touchdown. The matchup is much better for Brian Robinson. He's up against the Bengals, whose run defense is average at best. And Robinson has looked good so far. Like, he was actually more valuable as a pass catcher than as a runner in week 1 against a tough Tampa Bay run defense. But he ran for 133 yards against the Giants last week. I think he just looks like a really solid play. They obviously don't want to expose Jayden Daniels by having him throw it 40 times a game. They are trying for that healthy run-pass balance, and I think Robinson's going to be a big part of that.
Erickson, are you scared off of Dobbins because of the Steelers defense? I mean, to play devil's advocate to Fitz, like the offenses that they've gone against have not been that imposing, right? I mean, it's been a Bo Nix-led team with, running backs that are struggling. It's been the Falcons who have Bijan Robinson, but Kirk Cousins was so limited in that game, it just kind of really hurt the whole offense. I do think the Steelers defense is quite good, so I'm not disagreeing with that, but is it so good that you're scared off of Dobbins, who has looked absolutely sensational, leads the league in rushing on like half the carries of the guy behind him, or are you leaning towards Brian Robinson in this one?
I think Brian Robinson is probably the safer option if you just want to bank points, because again, I think that the matchup is definitely better from what we've seen over the past 2 weeks to open the year. But we've seen the Steelers defense at times be a little bit leaky against the run. Again, they're known more for their pass rush versus the run defense per se. And we know the Chargers are going to establish the run. They have a great offensive line, right? Besides Joe Alt-Delete, baby. Like, I cannot wait to see that matchup against TJ Watt. I mean, you saw him go toe-to-toe with Max Crosby in week 1. So I'm got my popcorn ready for a offensive line, defensive line matchup. I can't wait for that. But for me, so again, going back to, yes, I think Robinson has the safer floor, but I just can't bring myself to bench Dobbins, man. He's healthy, right? I don't want to bench. These weeks are precious that we have J.K. Dobbins available to us, and I don't want to bench a guy that's on absolute fire right now. He is absolutely in fuego, and I mean, it's not like the Chargers are going to score. I don't think they're going to score 0 points. Now, if we get more like negative news around Justin Herbert and his availability, and it just makes it so much harder, then okay, I'm going to try to pivot. Like I said, I think that Robinson has the higher floor, but man, I can't bench someone that's been as hot as Dobbins has been so far.
I also I don't think you should play fantasy based purely on emotion or anything like that, but won't you just feel so dumb and frustrated if you sit J.K. Dobbins and he has another 130 yards?
Because you only probably
touchdown?
played him one time, because you probably didn't start him week 1 because you didn't know what was going to happen, and you played him last week, and now you feel great, and you're going to sit him again? So you would have sat him twice, the NFL's leading rusher. I don't know.
By the way, he has played, and the Steelers almost always have a really strong defense. This isn't like new that they're really good. He's played them, I think, 3 times in his career when he was with Baltimore, And every time he had at least 90 yards, he was over 100 two of those games. He scored a touchdown.
Didn't Gus Edwards usually have like great splits against the Steelers too for some reason? Am I like just imagining that, or was that an actual thing?
I think maybe I don't have his numbers up in front of me, so it's just anecdotally trying to remember. But I know Dobbins has always done very well, and it was pre-injuries and stuff. But it's not like it's a defense that has really slowed him down before. How far apart are these guys in your rankings, Fitz?
16th for Robinson among running backs and RB 24 for Dobbins.
Yeah. So both very reasonable starts. I wanted to ask about them just because I think given where people got Dobbins on draft day, that there are likely like kind of clear starting running backs that you're picking between him and that guy. He's one of those players this year where he is becoming a clear starter, and so therefore you might have some extra depth at running back. So yeah, I mean, I tend to lean towards the upside too with Dobbins, but I really like both these guys this week for sure. Let's go to another running back debate here, a less exciting one in my opinion. Zamir White versus Austin Ekeler. And Erickson, I'll start with you this time.
I mean, you have to start Zamir White because his number one fan is the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So Antonio Pierce was quoted this week. I'm going to keep pumping him up. Our goal is to get 20 plus touches with Zamir White. The goal didn't happen this week. It didn't happen, but it's going to be gold this week. And every week while he's the starting running back, well, I'm here as the head coach. So look, they're playing the Carolina Panthers. I know Zamir White maybe doesn't systematically fit this offense the way that they envisioned it when they hired Luke Getsy, and that remains to be seen long-term how long Zamir will hold onto this job. But this matchup is too good against the Carolina Panthers for running back that you could project easily for 15 to 20 touches overall if they're playing with a positive game script. So I think this is one of those where you got to close your eyes, put Zamir White in your starting lineup, and especially with Ekeler. Ekeler is the cleared RB2. I think he's clearly behind Brian Robinson. And even though Ekeler, I think, has actually looked pretty good. I mean, he returned a kickoff for a touchdown that got called back due to a penalty last week. So he looks like he's got some juice back. But I think Zamir White, the matchup is too good, and he's going to get usage according to his head coach.
He's looked so bad. I mean, he looked terrible in that Ravens game and barely much better in week one. But yeah, this is, like you said, like running back against the Panthers, just don't overthink it. Running back against the Panthers has been a cheat code so far this season. I expect it to continue to be a cheat code throughout the year. Fitz, are you rolling with White as well?
Yeah, but wait, guys, Davante Adams and Brock Bowers are destroying the defense, but Zamir White only has 14 touches. We have to get him 6 more. Never mind how well things are working with the passing game. Yeah, I mean, the Panthers have already given up 399 rushing yards in the first 2 weeks and 3 touchdown runs. This is probably the worst run defense in the league. I mean, maybe the Colts are making a run at them, but no Derek Brown. A'Shawn Robinson, another veteran defensive tackle, missed practice on Wednesday, so he's really iffy for this game. I mean, this is a team you can run all over. And as Erickson pointed out, Antonio Pierce does want to run the ball. So, yeah, maybe this has been a more balanced offense than we thought it would be just because Adams and Bowers have been so good. But, any concern about the low snap share for Zamir White in week 1, 38%. It was up to 61% in week 2. He's still the lead guy here, and this is just the smash matchup. As Erickson was telling me before the show, like if Zamir doesn't get it done in this matchup, you can never play him again. I mean, how can you trust him if he doesn't go off against the Panthers?
Where are you ranking him, Fitz? Is this like, because we're kind of talking about it like it's a close your eyes, grit your teeth, just like suck it up and play him. But given the matchup and the usage that at least Antonio Pierce is talking about, should we maybe be like somewhat excited about starting him? Or, I mean, how are you kind of approaching it just mentally in terms of where you're ranking him?
RB 26, hold your nose and put him in your lineup.
Okay. So outside the top 24, even given the matchup. Erickson, what about you?
Yeah, he's like a low-end RB2 for me. I think that if you get a touchdown, 60 rushing yards, you're feeling good.
Yeah, take that and run. All right, let's go to a couple of wide receivers here. For the first week this year, I'm not asking you guys Tank Dell versus Terry McLaurin, but I am going to ask you about Tank Dell. I'm going to ask you about him versus Jaylen Waddle. Erickson, Waddle has been your guy all summer long. Obviously, things look a little bit different now without Tua, and obviously still kind of the number 2 in that offense. So what are you doing with this one? Tank Dell versus Jaylen Waddle this week.
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be Tank Dell. I guess the way I'm looking at the situation is, do I want Skylar Thompson's number 3 or do I want CJ Stroud's number 3? Because I think that in the pecking order, I think it's going to be Hill and then it's going to be Achane. seeing the majority of usage in the Dolphins offense with Skylar Thompson on the road against the Seahawks, especially how their run defense can be kind of taken advantage of. So I think Waddle, again, I think he falls to third, whereas Tank Dell, maybe he's not even really third. Maybe it's really more of a 2A, 2B with him and Diggs kind of switching off with Nico Collins up at the top. So again, Tank Dell, look, we wouldn't be upset about him or questioning starting him if he just caught that long touchdown last week, right? He was just like very close to catching a long one from CJ Stroud. He's still seeing downfield looks. Look, this Vikings defense is good with Brian Flores, but they're also very aggressive. So they will try to create big plays with sacks and turnovers and interceptions, but that means they also give up big plays on the back end. And we've seen Tank Dell make big plays down the field. So I will take my chances with CJ Stroud and Tank Dell.
Who do you prefer here, Fitz? And it feels to me like who you prefer is more dependent on how you feel about Jaylen Waddle, maybe than it is about Tank Dell. Because Waddle's the one whose situation has drastically changed, right? So, prior to the season, it would have been kind of easier to say Waddle kind of no matter what. Who do you prefer in this scenario with Skylar Thompson at quarterback?
I prefer Dell for all the reasons that Erickson just enumerated. And I'm not totally out on Waddle. I've got him wide receiver 26. He's a really good player. It's not as if Skylar Thompson can't throw a spiral. So there's a good play caller with Mike McDaniel. They're going to find ways to get the ball into Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle's hands. But still, it is ultimately CJ Stroud versus Skylar Thompson, and you have to go with the Stroud receiver.
Let's go to another wide receiver debate. Ladd McConkey versus Jayden Reed. Fitz, I'll start with you on this one.
Oh, Erickson's making me second guess this one because he does make a great point about slot receivers versus the Steelers. I have Jayden Reed for now just a little bit higher. And this certainly becomes a no-brainer, I think, if Jordan Love does play. Like, he returned to practice rather unexpectedly on Wednesday, although the Packers have been one of the most cautious teams in the league for years about rushing back injured players. And we're not talking about any injured player here. We're talking about their franchise quarterback. So I kind of doubt that Jordan Love plays. Only 2 catches last week for Jayden Reed for 9 yards, but he did have 2 carries for 37 yards. And frankly, I'm surprised he didn't have more carries with Malik Willis in at quarterback. So the Love injury hurts all the other Green Bay receivers more than it hurts Jayden Reed because they scheme him the ball anyway on just easy wide receiver screens and little hitches and reverses. I like Ladd, but so far he's averaging 5.5 targets a game and 9.3 yards per catch. So he's not getting heavy volume and he's not making big plays. Maybe the matchup does enhance his outlook a little bit, but I still think I prefer Reed, the more proven playmaker.
This one was pretty tough for me. Erickson, what do you think?
I think it's Ladd. I mean, why is he not the favorite to lead the Chargers in targets this week? If you have Quentin Johnston, he's going to get Joey Porter Jr. Josh Palmer is banged up. They don't throw to the tight end. So again, if maybe the run game is not as effective, if we're expecting the Steelers defense to give them issues, I think McConkey out of the slot to get the ball out quick out of Herbert's hands, who's also dealing with the injury. I don't think this one's close. I mean, especially if Malik Willis is starting. I mean, I have no faith that any of these Jayden Reed was wide receiver 48 last week because it's because Malik Willis is the quarterback. So like Fitz said, I don't think Jordan Love is going to play. So for me, I think it's McConkey by a lot, honestly.
I mean, you say that you think he's going to lead the league, or not the league, lead the team in targets this week, but that's what, like a half dozen? It's not like leading the team in targets is going to get you into double digits.
12 targets is pretty good. Half a dozen. Or excuse me, sorry. Dozen's not 24.
No, it's not. I wasn't going to call you out on that. But
no, I immediately took the L right away. I was like, wait, that doesn't make any sense.
If Ladd McConkey gets 12 targets, that will be awesome. I would expect more like 6, though, if he's leading the team. So
Math class here at Fantasy Pros. This is the wrong place to come for your mathematics lessons, I believe.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's funny. I went to journalism school, and everybody there was like, "I got into journalism to never do math again in my life." It was.
I thought you said a baker's dozen. That's why I was confused. Okay.
Which would only be 13, not 24. All right. All right, guys. Low testosterone affects about 30% of adult men in America. Are you feeling the drag of fatigue, noticing a dip in muscle mass, or sensing a slump in libido? If so, it's time to get your testosterone levels tested. If you have low T, Kaisertrex is an FDA-approved pill that's changing the game in testosterone replacement therapy. In fact, Kaisertrex restored testosterone levels in nearly 9 out of 10 clinical study participants, and its unique formulation bypasses the liver to avoid liver damage. It's time to break free from injections, pellets, and gels. Choose Kaisertrex and take a step forward toward being the hero of your life again. To learn more, visit Kaisertrex.com. That's KYZATREX.com. By prescription only. Kaisertrex is a controlled substance that can be target of abuse. Kaisertrex is not for use in pregnant women or men with prostate or breast cancer. Safety and efficacy in those younger than 18 is not known. Tell your doctor about all medical conditions and medications. Serious side effects could include increased blood pressure, worsening prostate symptoms, increased risk of prostate cancer, blood clots in the legs or lungs, decreased sperm count, liver problems, enlarged or painful breasts, and breathing problems while you sleep. Common side effects include swelling of the ankles, feet, or body, increased red blood cell count, an increase in prostate-specific antigen or PSA levels. PSA is a test used to detect prostate cancer. Report these symptoms to your doctor. Call your doctor to learn more about Kaisertrex. For questions or more information, visit www.kaisertrex.com or call 1-833-949-5040. All right, guys, let's get into some more rapid-fire start-sit decisions. We'll start at running back, and we'll start with a couple of teammates. Chase Brown versus Zach Moss. Erickson, I'll start with you because you've kind of been predicting that Moss would start the season ahead in the pecking order, and then Chase Brown would take over. Do you expect that to happen week 3? Who are you starting between these two?
Yeah, I do not expect that to happen in week 3 because I think that the Bengals will have their way with the Commanders' defense. So I think there's going to be a ton of touchdown opportunities. And from what we've seen in the 2 games, Zach Moss is still the guy they want to use at the goal line. So like week 1, he scored a touchdown. He came close to scoring last week. So I think you just play Zach Moss because I think he has definitely much higher touchdown upside and appeal.
What do you think, Fitz? Chase Brown versus Zach Moss?
I do think at some point the Bengals start to crave a little more explosiveness from their backfield and maybe start to level the gap here in usage between Zach Moss and Chase Brown. But it has been Zach Moss. He's played 84 snaps and has 24 touches. Chase Brown, 30 snaps, 10 touches. Moss is the Bengals' lead back for now. I don't know if it's going to last. I mean, he's averaging 3.7 yards per carry and 2.38 yards after contact per carry. Not great. He has one explosive run, and it barely meets the threshold for an explosive run. I think, it's 15 yards, and his run was 16 yards. I still think Chase Brown's better, but for now, the job belongs to Moss.
Let's look at a couple wide receivers here. Diontae Johnson, new quarterback in Carolina with Andy Dalton stepping in, versus Demarcus Robinson, who's going to have a lot more opportunity now with both Cooper Kupp and Puka on the shelf. Fitz, I'll start with you on this one. Diontae Johnson or Demarcus Robinson this week?
I'm optimistic that Andy Dalton can perk up Diontae Johnson a bit, but I'm not ultra confident that it's going to happen. So I feel a little bit better about Demarcus Robinson getting at least 6-7 targets this week against the 49ers.
Erickson, who do you prefer, Diontae Johnson or Demarcus Robinson?
I prefer Diontae Johnson because when you just look at, again, you have the bump or projected bump with Andy Dalton taking over a quarterback. When you look at what these guys have done through 2 weeks, again, considering Diontae has had the worst quarterback play possible, he has more targets and just one fewer catch so far than Demarcus Robinson does. So again, we know at this point who Demarcus Robinson is. Like, he's not a number 1 wide receiver. He's being lifted up by the opportunity with Matthew Stafford, but 2 weeks in and he's had opportunities because their receivers have been hurt. He hasn't really done that much with it. So I'm going to take Diontae. I think that he's going to see a boatload of targets here. I think you're going to see the bump in offense with Dalton.
Let's run through a few flex options here. And this one may sound a little weird to include a big name like this, but prior to the end of the game in week 2, he hadn't really lived up to the billing super a ton. Drake London versus Aaron Jones. And Erickson, I'll start with you on this one. London or Jones?
It's Drake London for me. I think that Aaron Jones, we were talking about some of these other running backs like Brian Robinson, like a J.K. Dobbins. You want to start those guys over Aaron Jones this week. Aaron Jones has the stone cold worst matchup for running backs against the Houston Texans. I mean, the Houston Texans have been the best running back or defense against running backs since the start of last season, basically since DeMeco Ryans took over. So he's also dealing with the injury. So he's banged up. They split usage with Ty Chandler. Horrible matchup. So I will take Drake London.
What do you think about this one, Fitz? I mean, Drake London was somebody that everybody was very aggressively drafting this year. Again, he did get the touchdown at the end of week 2, but that's really been all that he's done so far. Tough matchup for Jones. Who do you like better?
This one's a really close call for me. I'm going London. I do think you can make a case that there's relative touch certainty with Aaron Jones, whereas London has only seen 10 targets. We thought, or at least hoped, that he was going to become the target hog we thought he should have been last year in Arthur Smith's offense. And so far, a 19.2% target share. That's not that great, but yeah, I just because of this matchup, I do think things skew toward London a little bit here.
Fitz, I'll stick with you for the next one. Jaylen Warren versus Khalil Shakir. Who do you have here?
I have to go with Shakir. Leading the Bills in targets, only 8, but the Bills just haven't had to throw much so far. And Shakir's caught all 8 of those targets for 96 yards and a touchdown. He's up against the Jaguars, who are good against the run, not so good in the secondary. It seems like a good spot for Shakir.
Erickson?
Cosign. I mean, Khalil Shakir is basically just, he's carrying over what he did last year when he was highly efficient. He's doing it again. So the volume may not be there again, as we don't really see one of these Bills receivers step up and become that number one target. But rest assured, when Khalil Shakir gets targets, he's producing with them. He's either scoring touchdowns or creating yardage. So it's going to be Shakir for me as well.
You guys are agreeing with each other a lot more this week than we did the first couple of weeks.
We got more data to work with. So
all right. Jameson Williams or Jerome Ford this week, Erickson?
It's a less shooting from the hip, as the kids say. This, for me, is going to be Jameson Williams. I think that the genie's out of the bottle. We saw Ford last week take a backseat to Diontae Foreman. Diontae Foreman started last week, so I don't really know what Jerome Ford's role is going to be. He wasn't nearly as used much in the passing game. A lot of his rushing yards came from a weird play when the Jaguars weren't necessarily ready for the Browns to run the football. So I think that his numbers last week are a little bit boosted, and the goal line opportunities, right? Diontae Foreman got the goal line opportunities last week for the Browns. So I think that Ford is heading in the wrong direction, whereas Jameson Williams, I mean, he's on a rocket ship to the moon after the first 2 weeks. So I just continue to play him. He's playing in Arizona, I believe, another shootout. Again, it's the game that you love. You can't stop talking about the Cardinals. Why would I not want Jared Goff's number one deep threat in a game with a 50.5 point total? So give me JMO.
Dude, I just every single week I want to watch the Cardinals play. Like,
you're not wrong.
Super fun. Like, now Marvin Harrison Jr. is actually good again. Trey McBride was my tight end one. Like, James Conner is super fun to watch, and their defense isn't good enough to just dominate teams. Like, it's going to be high scoring games. I mean, I know the Rams didn't do very well against them, but in general, that's what I expect. So I love watching. I think Lions Cardinals is going to be an awesome game. I'm really excited for it. Fitz, same question: Jameson Williams versus Jerome Ford, and I will say too, like I kind of struggled to find a good comparison for Jameson Williams. I picked Ford because he was close in our overall expert consensus rankings, in our flex rankings. But him versus almost any running back in this range, I find myself going towards Jameson Williams. Do you agree, or do you like Ford here?
No, I agree with Jameson Williams, and this might have been a tougher call had we seen Jerome Ford used in week 2 the way he was used in week 1. But that was an abrupt shift for the Browns from a workhorse role for Jerome Ford to basically a split backfield with Diontae Foreman. So it seems like things are trending toward the split backfield and a role for Foreman. So JMO's a pretty easy call. I do think his ECR of wide receiver 20 might be a little overly optimistic. So far, the Lions are leading the NFL in pass attempts. Jared Goff has, I can't remember if it's 82 or 83, but that leads the league. And Jameson Williams has 20 targets. Big target share on a team with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. I don't think we can count on 10 targets for Jameson Williams every week, but on the other hand, this is the guy who can make his bones in fantasy with just a couple of catches. Like, he is a big play waiting to happen.
I believe he has the 5th most targets in the NFL this season,
wow,
which is not something that I expected coming into the year, but is really awesome to see, especially since, like you said, he doesn't even need that many targets to have a big game, and yet he's also getting the targets. So yeah, I'm totally with you there. One more flex debate here: Rashid Shaheed versus Javonte Williams. Fitz, what do you think about this one?
I have to go with Shaheed. He is not going to continue to average 18.8 yards per target and 4.69 yards per route run all season. But Clint Kubiak does have this Saints offense humming, and the Eagles are still having trouble with pass coverage. Like, they have not fixed this thing. Quinyon Mitchell might turn out to be a really good cornerback, but we saw the Falcons zip down the field rather easily at the end of the game. I'm sure Eagles fans had to be alarmed, seeing a lot of the same issues they were seeing last season during the second half meltdown for the Eagles. So, yeah, I mean, I'm holding out hope for Javonte, but the Broncos offense has just been a train wreck with Bo Nix. They might have to go the way the Panthers did and just kind of not risk ruining Bo Nix by continuing to throw him out there every week when he's just clearly overmatched.
Does it worry you, Fitz, that like it has required this kind of big game-breaking touchdown from Rashid Shaheed in order for him to have these big days? Like, if he just doesn't break a long one, the stat line isn't actually as impressive as it has looked in the first couple of weeks?
Well, the Saints haven't thrown much. So we haven't really gotten a good handle on, he and Chris Olave don't have a lot of targets, but just because the Saints are averaging like 20 pass attempts a game. So they're not going to be in game scripts this favorable all year. Like, both week 1 and week 2, they completely jumped on their opponents and did not have to step on the gas pedal at all in the second half.
Erickson, who do you like better between Shaheed and Javonte this week?
I mean, I still like Shaheed. Look, we're talking about how Jameson Williams has risen up the ECR ranks up to week 3. Isn't Rashid Shaheed just doing the exact same thing? Again, he's also seeing a lot of targets in the Saints offense relative to how many times they've thrown the ball. Again, the Lions have thrown the ball way more, which is why he has more raw targets than Shaheed, but Shaheed's target share in the Saints offense is still really good. So again, this should be a shootout. They're playing the Philadelphia Eagles at home, and where the zone man splits, whenever Rashid Shaheed plays a zone cover team, you always want to start him. This week, it's not as favorable, but I think that we could see, okay, when Shaheed doesn't catch that long touchdown, well, what is the floor? I think the floor is going to be higher in this new offense than it's been in years past. So I know that we're always afraid, oh, this is the week that he's going to be a bust. He's going to do, 0 catches or 1 catch for 9 yards. I think maybe even if he doesn't catch a long touchdown, I think he can still be productive. And I mean, I said this last week when we were talking about Javonte Williams, comparing him to a receiver that can get there on one play. Javonte Williams could get 15 touches and still do nothing, right? Just based on the way that we've seen this Broncos offense operate. And I don't know what to expect from Sean Payton. I don't know who's going to play because he's changed up the usage every single week. Week 1, he didn't use Javonte at all in the second half. And then week 2, it was Khalil McLaughlin that he didn't use in the second half. So I'm done trying to project what Sean Payton's going to do in his mind. I'm not sure if he's lost his fastball or not, but I have way more confidence starting Shaheed with this offense that's revolutionizing the NFL, some might say. So I'm going to go with Shaheed.
Let's look at a couple of quarterbacks here, Erickson. Baker Mayfield, who's been very good this year, or Derek Carr, who's also been very good this year.
Yeah, I think you got to stay in the Flames with Derek Carr. I think that they're playing at home. They're playing the Eagles. Again, a team that has not fixed their issues on defense, specifically pressure rate, right? We're looking at, okay, can Derek Carr keep this up? Well, if he's never pressured, which has been the case for the first 2 weeks of the season, he has not been under pressure whatsoever because of the motion, because of play action. He's been kept upright, and that's why he's been able to rip for all these big plays. The Eagles ranked 31st in pressure rate, right? They couldn't stop the Atlanta Falcons. They couldn't stop Kirk Cousins from a game-winning drive. So I'm going to go with Derek Carr staying in the Flames. I don't think it's going to keep up all year, but for week 3, I think he continues to roll.
Fitz?
How could you bench the QB1 in fantasy scoring? It's Baker Mayfield for me, and here's the difference in my eyes. The Saints have a good running game. PFF has their running game graded 3rd so far, and their run blocking graded 2nd. The Buccaneers are 28th and 24th in those two categories. So the Buccaneers have to throw to win. I'll take the Bucs and Baker Mayfield here.
Let's look at a tight end here. Isaiah Likely, obviously a massive week 1 and then a big disappointment in week 2 versus Dallas Goedert. AJ Brown banged up, maybe some more opportunity there. Fitz, I'll start with you on this one.
I don't know how Goddard got only 4 targets in a game where AJ Brown wasn't playing, and where Jalen Hurts threw the ball 30 times. I feel like that has to correct itself. I'm going with Goddard.
Erickson?
Fitz, you don't sound confident because I'm gonna say I'm gonna say Goddard too. Don't feel confident about it, but looking at the optics of the matchup, no AJ Brown. If you see Marshawn Lattimore lock up with Devonta Smith, is it going to be Britton Covey again? Just seeing all these underneath dump off targets. Dallas Goedert has to step up in this matchup. They need him to step up. So I think you got to roll with Goddard as well.
Do you guys feel like the upside might be higher with Likely, though? Like, obviously the floor is there, but it feels
100%.
like it could very easily be just like, hey, this is another Likely game. Like, we're facing Micah Parsons and the Cowboys defensive line. Let's keep Mark Andrews in to help block and 2 tight end sets and just throw to Likely a bunch. Like, it feels like he could catch a lot of passes.
I don't know if I've ever seen Goddard have a game like Likely had in week 1. I can't
remember him having one.
I have to check, but I don't remember him ever going over 100 yards, catching touchdowns in one game. Like, he's always been pretty status quo. He's been a floor play his entire tight end career. Essentially, he's always been a back end fantasy tight end 1. So you think with additional opportunities, he'll be able to cash in. But yeah, I think Likely definitely has the higher ceiling.
Yeah, Fitz, kind of same thought. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, so for a while, Goddard was kind of a big play tight end. Like, he would do really well in yards per catch, yards per target, yards per route run. So I do think there's like actual big play potential with Goddard if they can find him. But yeah, it's just the curious non-usage so far this season has been, I don't know. I mean, he is getting old, Erickson, as we were talking about before the show. Like, he's almost 30. Maybe he's just starting to slow down a little bit. I mean, we've seen Grant Calcaterra basically used as much in this offense as we've seen Dallas Goedert used. That's a little concerning if you're a Goddard investor right now.
I'm looking at Goddard's career game logs here. He has 5 games over 100 yards in his career, 135 yards with no touchdowns, 117 with 1, 105 with 2, 101 with 1, and 100 with 1. All of those, except for 1, came in 2021 or no, one of them was 2022, but only one of them has come in 2023. So for whatever it's worth, he's been close and in that range, but not very often. Say goodbye to start-sit dilemmas with FantasyPros Start-Sit Assistant. Within seconds, you'll know exactly who to play for optimal results each and every week. Leveraging insights from numerous experts, the Start-Sit Assistant aligns your lineup decisions with the top minds in fantasy football, giving you a competitive edge. Maximize your lineup's potential with just a few clicks. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook and make winning decisions in no time. Guys, let's wrap up with the touchdown calls contest. Remember, you can participate in our contest on Discord each and every week of the season, win fun prizes. We're going to give our picks. We're splitting up the positions every week, rotating through. This week, it is Fitz on running back, myself on wide receiver, and Erickson on tight end. I will point out that after I was the only one to get it wrong in week 1, I was the only one to get it correct in week 2. So we have each gotten 1 right across 2 weeks.
Who was your guy that scored last week?
I already forgot. I wrote down that I got it right, and then I forgot to remember who the name was.
Clearly, it was a big. It was a big moment for you.
I had Dobbins. I was running back. I was trying to remember the receiver I picked, and I was like, oh no, wait, I wasn't on receiver.
Because I know you picked Trey McBride in week 1, and then he fell on the ball in week 2.
Yes. So he got it a week later in a weird way, and then I was running back last week. I took Dobbins. That one obviously worked out well. I mean, it was kind of easy. Just take the guy against the Panthers. And speaking of, Fitz, who's your running back?
Is there a trend here?
The guy is going against the Panthers. Zamir White, if ever there was a week to pick Zamir White to score a touchdown, I think it would be this week.
I cannot argue with that one. At wide receiver, I'm taking Brandon Aiyuk. Obviously, Deebo Samuel now banged up. I'm just kind of expecting Aiyuk to, he's shaking off more of the rust after missing a lot of the preseason. I'm expecting a big game from him this week. Erickson, who's your tight end?
I'm going with Travis Kelce. I don't know if we're going to ever see the yardage receptions totals that we've seen from Kelce in years past, but with no Pacheco, I think that they dial up the pass game, and Mahomes and Kelce have a good connection in the red zone. Kelce's been very close to scoring touchdowns the last 2 weeks, just kind of falling a little bit short. I think he finds the end zone in week 3.
All right, so Zamir White at running back, Brandon Aiyuk at wide receiver, and Travis Kelce at tight end. We will get out of here on that one. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Good luck in week 3 for Fitz and Erickson. I'm Ryan Wormeli. We'll see you again next time.